Top Gun, we were able to reduce our attrition rate in the dogfight arena to greatly give an advantage to our pilots because we knew the tricks. We knew the capabilities. And we're talking about the first Top Gun movie that was released over 20 years ago. He just got done with a cross-country trip from coast to coast in vintage Muscat with an 85 horsepower engine, painted yellow. Very prominent paint job. He calls it the Carolina Canary because he lives in the Carolinas. And back to Jim and Vanderbilt several years ago, only because he got a chance to go on the P-51 Warbird ship. He threw me under the bus. But Jim, I just have to say, number of the piston-powered aircraft, the spotter aircraft roll in behind the power indicator area and head to our east towards the lakes. 51 F-86 stable of fast airliners as well. Spotter aircraft overhead, the LNO aircraft. Low and slow is where they flew, but they were observation aircraft. They were eyes in the sky. They could report the enemy position and then relay it to fast forces to come in and try to annihilate the enemy position. They could actually operate in the ocean environment as well. A device called a Brody device that allowed them to be swung off the left side of the landing ship tank after being stored on the deck of the landing ship tank. L4s and L5s could carry those and flash down about 6 or 8, sometimes 10 aircraft. That gray airplane taking off, that's the older of the two Carroll Holding aircraft. It had a pretty name against it. It was a brown aircraft that liked to roll a long way because around gave it the nickname Mosquito because it sounded the propeller very high pitch, just like that pesky little mosquito that wants to take you away. Flying solo in front of us is the French version of the P-80 Shooting Star, Lockheed's first fighter, which, by the way, did not have the ground position. Even though it was not equal in its wing design to have the speed it needed. What they did was like grade school, the basic like high school, this airplane is here before. Would be overtrained. Used in the military, believe it or not, even though it had a key. Used in motion pictures, like Tora, and Black Sheep Squadron, television series Black Sheep. And now the twin engine aircraft. P-51 Mustangs. As it passes in front of you, you will see the various profiles that identify the aircraft. P-51s were powered by an American-built Allison engine. Last time, altitude control engine part. And then the turkey, as they call it, the Grumman TBM.
No,
the one in the dark blue with 54 on the tail. And the one with white on the bottom, medium blue in the center, dark blue on the top. Story about a very famous guy and his crewmates on board. Aircraft at Reno. Yellow L-39 on the landing. Okay, the T-28s. Following up in World War II, North America came out with a powerful freighter, 3 versions of it, powered by bright engines of 2 different horsepower. For the newly formed United States Air Force, they had an 800 horsepower engine. That thing had a good long runway. They were reinforced. When you land on decks of aircraft carriers, people that do that say, first airliner that could carry decent freight and didn't need a government subsidy to pay the fine. Arrival on the decks of an aircraft carrier. The B-25 took the distinction between the A-26 and the going to the right. That's what it looks like on the new little ring. What that would lead to that day early on in the war would be that little less than 80 years ago. P-25 twin-engine aircraft was a medium-range aircraft. Get a low pass from the A-26 Avenger. That was a Douglas aircraft, and it was the fastest bomber in World War II target. All right, here's the A-26 low. That's the one. It was B-26 or B-26. What we found out by researching World War II aircraft, sometimes there would be funds to be allocated to an attack aircraft that would not be allocated to a fighter. So after the war, the Martian bombers, the B-26, were shut down, grounded. TBM came in on the half and then he delegated torpedo doors open on the TBM. Now, story about it, they had been trying to bomb it into oblivion. Nobody had succeeded. One of the crew members was Leo Nadu. Just before takeoff, Leo Nadu was not very happy about that, but it saved his life. On that Bush. George Bush and Leo called each other every December. Calling each other by their first name, happy to be alive. According to the record books, well over 15,000 of those aircraft were built after World War II. Like many of the aircraft, you can pick them up Fort Thunberg. Set a record of level flight, 405 miles an hour. There's a reason for the engineering behind that bent wing. It was going to be an aircraft carrier aircraft. Now, landing in front of you, man, September 2nd, 1944. I'm lucky to be alive. Look where we are now. You can't make that stuff up. You can't make it work. thousands of these aircraft. So off they went to Canada. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we get ready for the missing man formation, please direct your attention out to the tree line right in front of us. We will begin tapping. If you're so inclined, would you like to stand out of respect? We would appreciate that. So all eyes out over the tree line horizon. Missing man formation done in place. Great EAAers